But first, you might have seen that 2 Michigan state legislators met with the president this afternoon at the White House. The topic of conversation apparently was election irregularities in that state, and it might not seem like a very big deal. Politicians coming to Washington to talk to the head of their party. It's pretty conventional. It happens a lot. What you didn't know is that it's now a felony. A guy called Richard Primus wrote a piece for the liberal blog Politico, arguing that the Republican legislators should be prosecuted for their visit to the White House. Primus claims to have authority on legal questions. He says he works at the University of Michigan's law school. According to Professor Primus, these 2 lawmakers are, quote, being visibly invited to a meeting where the likely agenda involves the felony of attempting to bribe a public official. Visibly invited? What does that mean? And how exactly would he know that bribes were offered in the White House? Well, of course, he wouldn't know, but it's not like Politico is going to fact-check a guy called Professor Primus, so they went with it. Whatever. It's a crime to talk to Trump. Everyone knows that. That's an article of faith at MSNBC. The rest of us in America have been laboring under the illusion that the First Amendment still applies in this country. MSNBC's legal experts know better than that. Supporters of unpopular presidents deserve the lengthiest jail sentences possible, at least 20 years. They've read the fine print on that, and they've confirmed it. They went to Yale Law School. Yesterday, one of the channel's anchors, a Harvard graduate you should know, someone whose blog was once unfortunately hacked by racist time-traveling cyber hooligans, explained the legal standard to viewers.
As he remains holed up in the White House like an end-stage dictator, refusing to concede, and frankly, to just go away, dissolving into unreality while the Republican Party remains silent. And at this point, it's hard to argue with lifelong Republicans like Stuart Stevens, who are calling it sedition.
Sedition! Ladies and gentlemen, this is serious. Sedition is punishable by decades in prison, possibly death. Get the scaffolds ready. In the considered legal opinion of an MSNBC anchor quoting an unemployed middle-aged political consultant, that's what we could be looking at here. Meanwhile, Democrats in Congress are suggesting the death penalty is on the table. Bill Pascrell, a representative from New Jersey, tweeted this, quote, "Tonight I'm calling for the eventual prosecution of Donald Trump and his enablers for their many crimes against the United States. Traitors will swing." Keep in mind that Bill Pascrell is a former mayor of a town in northern New Jersey. In northern New Jersey. But he's very upset about the idea of corruption in politics. The New Jersey mayor's shocked. So much for democratic norms and the peaceful transitions of power they've spent 4 years lecturing us about. There will be none of that. They think they won, now they want blood. And by the way, Joe Biden hasn't spoken up against any of this. Apparently he agrees with it. Kamala obviously does. What is this? Well, it's ugly and it's bad. It's also dangerous, far more dangerous than anything Rudy Giuliani could do in 1,000 press conferences. You'll notice that Giuliani has not called for the White House to round up and imprison its political opponents. He never will call for that. Republicans generally don't call for that. In fact, they never do. Republicans are fascists, the New York Times tells us. What a hack newspaper. But who's eager to shoot the prisoners? It's not right-wingers. It's the other side. And it always is the other side. Always. We've seen it for the last 4 years. Federal authorities, many of them openly hostile to the current administration, use the power of law to punish their political enemies. And we saw it unfold right on television. They pursued process crimes like they were dangerous felonies. Why'd they do that? You know why they did it. At one point, they sent a SWAT team and a TV crew from CNN to raid the home of an unarmed 68-year-old man because they claimed he had vital information about Russia collusion. They actually told a judge that. They dragged him from his home like he was running a fentanyl lab or like he'd just stolen a tank from a military base. And in the end, after they humiliated him, destroyed his life, we learned what we already knew. Roger Stone wasn't part of any conspiracy. In the end, the feds were forced to downgrade the charges from agent of Vladimir Putin to he may have lied to Congress once. The whole thing was a disgrace, but so-called liberals loved it. They clapped like seals at a water park, totally delighted by this man's suffering.
Roger Stone, like Donald Trump, is a political con man whose showman shtick has finally caught up with him.
Let me be the first to say, if you look up the word scumbag in the dictionary, you're going to see Roger Stone's picture there.
I am just so damn happy this guy is indicted and arrested. He is a horrible human being. He is a thug. He is a bully.
bye-bye, baby. That's what they say when they come for you. It's sickening. It ought to scare you. It ought to make you worry about what happens when ghouls like that take power in this country. The whole process is inevitable. You could have called it. We've seen it unfold all over the third world only for like 100 years. When you politicize law enforcement, and they have, when you prosecute the president's advisors for lying, but ignore the obvious lying from, say, the acting director of the FBI, the director of national intelligence who lied under oath, you get what we're seeing now. The same people who complained about a politicized Department of Justice are now salivating at the prospect of unleashing the Department of Justice on their political enemies. And why wouldn't they do that? Kamala Harris has been calling for it for quite some time.
If you become president, if he was never impeached, would you want the Department of Justice, now that he is no longer a sitting president, to go forward with those obstruction of justice charges?
I believe that they would have no choice and that they should, yes. There has to be accountability.
There has to be accountability. We're keeping an irony file, but it's too big. We have to have accountability, says the politician who refused to submit to a single press conference while running as Joe Biden's running mate. The dishonesty is brazen, and you can begin to understand why so many Americans have lost their faith in our institutions, including in our elections. Why? Because the people managing them are dishonest and incompetent. Our leaders are demanding that we cower in our homes. They dine at the French Laundry. They're fantasizing about punishing you for how you voted. But if you dare to notice any of this, if you dare to notice what's happening, you're the dangerous lunatic. Maybe get the DOJ on your trail. Every once in a while, the mask does slip, and they concede what's going on. Occasionally, the media class tells the truth. It almost always happens by accident. It happened earlier this month. A PBS correspondent, by the way, that's someone whose salary you help pay with your tax dollars, that's an actual employee of actual state media, admitted that the relentless focus on jailing Donald Trump and his supporters actually helps the media. The media understand their ratings will plummet if they're forced to talk about anything other than Donald Trump. They have nothing to say, and of course they'll never cover Joe Biden. They voted for Joe Biden. So that's their nightmare scenario. By continuing to hyperventilate about Donald Trump for the rest of their lives, if possible, maybe they'll stave off irrelevance till the mortgage is paid. Listen closely to this clip.
So you have been President Trump selling this idea that there's a deep state conspiracy theory against him, that he's the #1 victim in America. So if he gets indicted, if he even goes to jail, he might sell that idea to the millions of people who voted for him, and he might become even more powerful. And that's what the GOP is really scared about. That's why you're seeing not that many people stand up to him.
It's unbelievable on every level. A correspondent who can't speak in a grammatically correct sentence, A. B, the dishonesty of it. Framing this as another clever conspiracy by Donald Trump. But of course, it's about the media. They're narcissists. Everything is about them. Of course, they want to keep talking about Donald Trump. They need to keep talking about Donald Trump. And if that means sending people to prison for the wrong political views, it is worth it.